The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Ontario's finance minister says there's no telling how long this pandemic will last. But in today's budget, Rod Phillips adds now is the time to begin building the foundation for economic recovery. What does that mean? Well, stick around and find out, because we'll have complete coverage of today's pandemic budget, starting with the highlights of how Ontario plans to spend $187 billion to get us out of a COVID-19 mess. Then, an interview with the finance minister, followed by reaction from the critics. And finally, a focus on small business to find out whether this budget does enough for them. It's Thursday, November 5th, Budget Day in Ontario. Next on the agenda. Well, the Ontario budget is always full of big numbers, but never as big as the numbers in today's pandemic edition. Let's crack open the virtual cover and share some of the details. Here we go, starting with record-breaking deficits. Last year, this is pre-pandemic, the province of Ontario ran a deficit of $8.7 billion. But look what happened to the bottom line of the province once the pandemic hit. For the fiscal year we're now in, 2020-2021, $38.5 billion is the deficit. That's the biggest number this province has ever seen. And even going forward, it's still going to be pretty sizable. $33.1 billion for next year and $28.2 billion for the year after. Clearly, no path to a balanced budget in this budget. Talk about record-breaking deficits, you also have to talk about record-breaking spending. And again, we'll do a little comparing and contrasting between pre-pandemic, which is the year 2019-2020. We spent $164 billion plus. What's happening this year? A massive 13% spending increase to take care of this pandemic. Budget 2020 will spend $187 billion, and that, too, is a record. How about the debt as a percent of Ontario's economy? If we go back to pre-pandemic, it was 39.7%, and then this year it goes up to 47%. The following year, 48.5%, and the following year, 49.6%. The previous government used to say, we're trying to keep that number to 40. That's when the books are sort of under control. We're clearly well above that now. Think back 30 years ago when Bob Rae was the Premier of Ontario. That number was 13%. We're a long way from 13 today. Where's all the money going? Okay, you know what number one is, obviously healthcare. The Ministry of Health will have a budget this year of $64+ billion. Education, that's K-13 and post-secondary, north of $41 billion. Children and social services will get almost $18 billion for their expenditures. And the fourth biggest item in the budget, interest on the debt, which is now north of $400 billion, incidentally. And that's $12.5 billion. The only good news there, interest rates are very low, in fact, expected to get even lower next year, 1.6%, which means that the interest on the debt next year will be the same number as this year. We're borrowing more, but still spending the same in terms of servicing that debt. Okay, in a COVID-19 era, let's talk about healthcare and where some of those expenditures are going. For example, $1.4 billion to increase testing, case and contact management, $351 million to create more than 2,000 hospital beds, $284 million to handle the surgical backlog. And each long-term care resident is expected to receive an increase of daily direct care to 4 hours per day over a 4-year period that's expected to come in. We'll talk about that some more going forward. What about helping seniors? There's a new tax credit in this budget, the Seniors Home Safety Tax Credit, where the government will offer 25% of up to $10,000 in residents' expenses to make your home safer. For example, you want to put in a wheelchair ramp, or you want to put safety railings up. If you're a senior living in your own home, or if you are not a senior, but you have a senior living in your home, right? Let's say grandma and grandpa or something are living in their kids' homes, they're eligible for that tax credit. Let's go to the other end of the demographic, support for children. The budget will offer $200 per child up to the age of 12 and $250 for young special needs children up to the age of 21. That was a provision that was brought in this year, Apparently it's popular. The government will roll it over and continue it next year. How about for business? Okay, the government will offer personal protective equipment grants of up to $1,000 for so-called Main Street small businesses. That'd be retail establishments, food, accommodations, and so on. And they'll also offer $57 million to help businesses increase their online presence, right? Help with developing websites and so on. That should help tens of thousands of businesses. And how about this? This is an interesting new one. I've never heard of this before. The government says it will explore. They haven't got details. They're talking about exploring covering 20% of Ontarians' tourism expenses. You can't go across the border, so to have a staycation and encourage people to stay home and travel within Ontario, they're going to look into subsidizing tourism expenses. We need to hear more about that. There's also $100 million for tourism, cultural and sports groups, and $25 million in emergency funding for arts institutions all over the province, which of course have been closed because of COVID-19 and have not been able to realize any revenue as a result. If you are watching us from rural or northern Ontario, this one will be of particular interest to you. The government is talking about spending $680 million over the next 4 years to build broadband infrastructure. Don't you love that when you play Netflix and the screen freezes up? More on that to come. How about tax relief? Here's for business. The government purports to hope to save medium and large industrial and commercial employers 14% and 16% respectively on their electricity bills. Yes, they will subsidize power costs to get those costs lower. They will reduce, the government says, business education tax rates to save businesses $450 million. And this past year, they brought in a program which was very popular with business. They want to make permanent the employer health tax exemption increase on payroll. If you had a payroll of $490,000, the government this past year upped it to $1 million. So if you've got $1 million in payroll, you now don't have to pay that employer health tax again. That's 30,000 more employers that will be exempted from paying the employer health tax. And as is our tradition here at TVO, we're pleased to have the most in-depth interview of the 10 or so that Rod Phillips will do today. Here's Ontario's Minister of Finance and the PC MPP for Ajax joining us from the Frost Block across from the Legislative Assembly. Treasurer, it's good of you to come on our airwaves tonight. How are you doing today?
Steve, it's a pleasure to be with you, and we're doing fine. It's a busy day, as you said, but you know, always happy to get information out and get a budget out, and so far so good.
Well, this was surely a very different budget, and I'll just start with this fact here. Most budgets that I remember covering, and I think I've only covered about the last 35 of them, basically said, here's what the numbers are going to be for this year. Your budget, in some respects, is like 3 budgets in one. There are a wide range of potential scenarios going forward. Why did you feel you needed to do that?
You know, Steve, you're right. That is an innovation, has not happened before, not just in Ontario, but in Canada. And it is an approach that we're seeing, you know, and we had talked about a week ago we were going to do this, but now others are following. With the uncertainty we're facing, literally something that hasn't happened in generations, we think it's important, of course, to have a mainline scenario. And we've looked at that, and that's the basis of our budget and our deficit projections and the other important financials, but also look at other outcomes. I mean, we are dealing with the highest level of volatility when it comes to private sector economists in anybody's memory, about 3 times what it was normally and 2 times what it was back in 2008, which you'll remember was pretty volatile. So to address that, we want to make sure that we give a range of scenarios, and then of course a range of other outputs. If there's higher revenue, then that might make the deficit lower. If there's lower revenue, that might make the deficit higher. Information for people who are closer readers to the budget, so they know you know what we expect, and then of course we'll adjust that going forward with another budget coming up in March.
I'm not meaning to be overly critical in asking this question, but it is just a fact that the province of Ontario is supposed to, you actually are supposed to by law, lay out a path to get us back to a balanced budget in each year's budget. You are proposing to pass a little exemption to that this year, saying we're not going to do that. How come?
Well, the uncertainty right now makes it very, very difficult for the reason I just talked about. We've got record volatility from private sector forecasters as well, from all of the forecasters that the government uses. So we will try to pass our path to balance and do that when we get to March and the March budget. But right now, quite frankly, Steve, it's just very, very difficult. What we did think was important, though, was to have a multi-year budget. We're the first major jurisdiction to do that. To be fair, Quebec is going to follow us. I think it's next week. Eric Girard, their finance minister as well. It's important for us to move from what was a one-year plan that we launched back in March. You'll remember we were the first government to come out and put out a plan and put out forecasts. We updated those forecasts at the end of the first quarter in August. This now gives a 3-year perspective, and we hope that we're going to be able to go further in the next budget. But right now, the uncertainty is quite high. We want to have as much transparency as we can. And as you know, every quarter, I get up in front of the media and the public, and I update on how we're doing.
You are a progressive conservative finance minister. And I know that when you got the job, you did not plan to bring in the biggest deficit by far in the history of the province of Ontario. How comfortable are you having to sign your name to a $38.5 billion net cash requirement this year?
Well, we were on track, as you know, to balance the budget in 22-23. We'd made some good progress in that direction. But Steve, everything changed with COVID-19. I mean, this, as I've said, and I said in my speech today, is the challenge of our generation, and it requires resources to make sure that we have the dollars. And I'm sure we'll talk about it, the dollars we're spending in healthcare and education, in long-term care going forward and today. So, I feel just fine about it. I would, rather we weren't in a global pandemic, but we are, and faced with that, I think the only thing that's responsible to do is make sure that we're spending, and we still make sure that we spend wisely and well, but that we're spending the money need to protect healthcare, to protect education, to protect our long-term care system, and also to start to make some more structural changes to support the economy going forward, because that's going to be important. Very soon, we hope we'll start to see COVID-19 start to recede, and then everybody's going to be thinking about recovery. We need to start thinking about that now, and of course that's part of today's budget as well.
Well, that dovetails nicely into my next question, which is, you did point out in the budget speech that it can take anywhere from, say, 24 months to 88 months typically to come out of a recession. Do you have any sense at all about where in that window we're going to come out this time?
We don't right now, Steve, but it's why I wanted to include that information. We are in a recession right now. It was the worst downturn by a factor of 4 in the histories in the country, in the province's employment in the second quarter of this year. We've come back up out of that fairly rapidly, but I wanted to make sure people knew that we had those historical precedents. We know that this is going to be difficult. Now, that's why we have the plan we have. That's why we're talking about multiple years, but we just don't know right now, and we need people to be aware that we're aware of it, that our plans think about multiple years, and that that we are going to get through this. But you're quite right. The recession of the early 90s, which you and I will remember, lasted 88 months before it got to pre-recession employment levels. So hopefully we won't be in for that, but we have to plan for every eventuality.
There are a ton of numbers in this budget, and it's hard in the time we have to know necessarily what to spend the most time on, and I'm not going to pretend that the next thing I'm going to ask you is the most important thing in the budget, because it's not, but it's certainly one of the most original things I've ever seen, so I wanted to ask you about it. The notion of exploring giving a tax break to Ontarians to encourage them to vacation in Ontario, a staycation tax credit, if you like. What's that going to look like? Any idea yet?
Well, we have something of an idea. We're going to work with the tourism industry. And of course, right now is not a time when we want to be encouraging people to travel. But we know it's going to be safer to travel within our borders than outside our borders sooner than later. And we very much know that the tourism industry has been very, very hard hit. So the idea of a 20% tax credit to make 2021, or 25% tax credit, or 20% tax credit to make 2021 the year of the Ontario staycation is something that has been used really effectively in some other jurisdictions to really take advantage of the fact that we have such a wonderful province, so many fantastic places that people want to go and see. And if the government can help that a little bit, that's going to be a big help for our tourism operators, a big help for our communities and small businesses. But again, we're going to have to wait until it's safe to do that. And we're going to be working with the tourism industry to make that a reality for 2021.
I think the 25% tax credit you might have been thinking about was actually my next question, which is the seniors tax credit to make their homes homes safer. The idea of putting in ramps or guardrails or that kind of thing, safety railings in people's homes. I gather the total uptake on this, if it goes as well as you think, is about $30 million. And on a budget of $187 billion, you could say that's not all that much for something that's potentially really important. If you can keep seniors in their homes a lot longer and therefore obviate the need to go to long-term care, that's a huge savings and it's better for them as well. So why isn't this program meatier?
Well, you know, Steve, and it's a strange thing for the Minister of Finance to say, but I'll be happy if those expenditures are higher, because I agree with you. Keeping seniors in our homes is a real priority, and our homes have become more of a priority because of COVID-19. And so we're hoping that this tax credit lets, seniors, even if they don't pay any taxes, they'll be able to take advantage of it. It'd be $2,500 if it was a $10,000 renovation. One of the other unique features of this is it's not just for the seniors on their own, but a family that might have a grandmother or grandfather. In Ajax, in my riding, there are many, many families with multiple generations. And again, if we can make it just that little bit easier for seniors to stay in the homes that they love, where they're safe, that's a priority. So, of course, the ministry does its estimates, and as we have to do. But I really hope and I really believe this is going to be a big success.
Well, the last Liberal government had a program not exactly like this, a little less generous, in place. They eventually shut it down because there just wasn't enough uptake on it. Are you concerned about that happening again?
I'm really not. We're just seeing a whole different view of homes from people for a variety of reasons. Of course, the situation in our long-term care homes has made seniors want to be staying in their homes, and we want to make sure that we can encourage that. It takes pressure off the other parts of the system. But also, our homes are meaning more to us, I think, in a post-COVID-19 world. So we're confident that this will have some take-up. We're certainly going to promote it and encourage it. And I think, any seniors out there, I would really encourage them to think about the kind of changes. It could be something like a wheelchair ramp, something around accessibility, could be a stability bar, could be any of the other things that help make your home just a little bit safer, a little more accessible. We'd like to help with that, and I think it's the right time to spend money on seniors and keeping them in their homes.
Let me stick with seniors for a second again and talk about long-term care. Now, I may have missed this in the budget, but I don't think I saw any numbers there that specifically related to the commitment that the Premier made the other day, which is 4 hours per day per long-term care resident. Did I miss it, or was it not there? I didn't see any budget numbers on that.
Yeah, it's certainly part of our fiscal plan, so the dollars will be there to fund it. Now, this is a recommendation that just came from our commission 2 weeks ago. It has been something that has been talked about by many, many advocates as being important, and it really is a historic commitment to move to 4 hours of care every day for everyone who is in long-term care. This will put Ontario, in the lead in terms of that kind of support. So the dollars will be there to support it. We're going to be getting a staffing plan in December from our minister. So it's very critical, obviously. We're talking about tens of thousands more staff. I actually spoke with Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, last week with the announcement. Their immigration minister talked about the immigration plans for the province. I said we'd like to speak as well about what role immigration can play to bring in that many new staff. But this is going to be a big change. It absolutely is in our financial plan, and we'll make sure that it gets done. And obviously, we're not going to wait 4 years to see that full move. We'll do that incrementally over time and see improvements. It's just so important to the quality of care and something we're very committed to doing. Okay.
Every treasurer, of course, in his or her budget brings in a rainy day fund or a contingency fund for those things that you don't know what are going to come down the road, and it's usually several $billion. Can you tell our viewers and our listeners what is the size of the rainy day fund that you've got in this budget, and what are you worried that you may have to spend it on over the next year?
Well, this was a strategy that we adopted, and frankly, every government in Canada has followed it. Back in March, we didn't know what the expenditures would be required for supporting, our citizens going through a pandemic. So we set aside dollars in contingencies. When we needed 300 million masks, 900 million gloves, we needed $1.1 billion, and of course, we wouldn't have known that in advance. So this year, we've set aside a significant amount. amount of money that's going to support, health, education, the vital services, as well as jobs and communities. Next, in terms of next year, and we have about $2.6 billion left in those contingencies this year, which again is good because we have, close to 5 months left in the fiscal year. So I think that's going to be important to have to make sure that we have that flexibility to do the things we need to do. Next year, we put $4 billion into the contingency for pandemic, as well as $1 billion for what we call the People and Jobs Fund, in addition to the normal contingencies, which are higher than ever, just in the budget. And of course, we also have the reserves. So considerable amount of prudence. And then the next year, again, we don't know how long COVID will last. So we've added $2 billion and another $800 million in the Jobs and People Fund over and above the mainline contingencies. So there's significant prudence built in here. As I said, it's really what most of the, all of the other provinces are doing now, and the federal government, as a way of planning in a situation that just has a high degree of uncertainty.
I know it is the opposition's job to oppose. I mean, that is their job after all, but they were extremely, what's the word? Well, they were extremely tough in their rhetoric today. I mean, the Liberals talked about this being a betrayal of the people of Ontario. The official opposition, the NDP, saying things like they can't understand why you cheaped out on, for example, having class sizes be 30 kids instead of 15, that there were opportunities for you to spend more money, personal service workers, and so on and so forth. Could you just comment on whether this budget, and I know you think it's generous where it needs to be, but in terms of what the opposition wanted, they were looking for a whole heck of a lot more. Why did you not go further in the areas they wanted you to go further in?
Well, of course, that is, as you know, and said, that is the job of the opposition. This is historic in terms of the expenditures on healthcare. It's really $8 billion of additional expenditures. We were talking about $73 billion in healthcare spending, over $70 billion over the next 3 years going forward, and that's of course with those contingencies that we've put in as well. So, on education, we've put $1.3 billion into the reopening. We have, significant capital expenditures, 1.5 this year, 1.9 billion the year after that. So, we are spending, as you mentioned, with off the top, with the size of the deficit. I mean, we were planning on a $6 billion deficit, and it's $32 billion more than that. That's all expenditures that we think are going to the right things, and that's the job of government to balance those out. And I suppose it is the job of the opposition to be critical, and I'm sure they'll do their job well, and we'll try to do ours well.
Well, you did have a line in your budget speech today in the legislature, and I'm going to quote it here because it was pretty tough for you, Minister Phillips. I've heard you before. You're not usually this tough. You said, when the critics get it wrong, the consequences are minor. When the government gets it wrong, people's lives are at stake. Who were you taking a shot at there?
The line before that, to be fair, was I said we do appreciate that those outside the system and their input. But what I wanted to point out, and I think this is something that people understand, is that of course it's the job of the opposition to criticize. We have pundits who regularly are talking about whether we're moving too far or not far enough when it comes to our health measures. So it's the job of the opposition to criticize, and we take that criticism soundly. But I think people understand that government is difficult, and government during a pandemic is very difficult. We're not asking for sympathy, but what we're saying is these decisions are always made with the knowledge that lives are at stake, and sometimes very much in the balance. So that's our responsibility. We take it very seriously. We understand others need to criticize. You've seen us make changes. We've adopted suggestions from all sides of the legislature, and we'll continue to do that. But it is the government's job to make those choices. We take it very seriously, make those choices, and we do it, most specifically thinking about the health of Ontarians, which makes sense in the middle of a global pandemic.
In our last 30 seconds then, Minister, the three big words you've used to sort of headline this budget are protect, support, and recover. And I wonder just finally, how close do you think we are in this province to the recover phase?
Well, I think we have to start working on it now, but quite clearly we're in the middle of a second wave. And so, we took initiatives to start the ball rolling. We need to think about it and start acting on it now. But Steve, we all watch the daily updates. We all hope for a vaccine. We all want things to get back to normal. The reality is it's going to be some time that we're going to be living with COVID-19. And we will just do what we need to do for that period to protect people in Ontario and to support communities. And yes, to make sure that our economy can recover.
Rod Phillips, Ontario's Minister of Finance, we appreciate you keeping the tradition alive of having the Treasurer spend part of budget night here on TVO. Thanks very much.
Steve, it's my pleasure. Stay safe.
All right, then. That's the government's view of the numbers. Let's see what the opposition critics have to say. And with that, we welcome from Queen's Park, Sandy Shaw. She's the NDP finance critic and the MPP for Hamilton West, Ancaster Dundas. In the downtown of the capital city, there's Mitzi Hunter, the Liberal finance critic and the MPP for Scarborough-Guildwood. And also at Queen's Park, Mike Schreiner. He's the leader of the Green Party and the MPP for Guelph. Delighted to welcome you three onto our program tonight. Kind of wish we were all in the studio together as we did a year ago at this time, but such is COVID-19. Can I just start by saying, we'll go to the official opposition first. Okay, you saw what the finance minister had to say. Let me just offer you the opportunity to pluck something out of that interview and comment on it. Go ahead, Sandy Shaw.
Well, I think what we should really be looking at, that this is really actually an underwhelming budget. If you strip out the contingency funds, which are massive, if you strip out the funding from the federal government, if you take out the one-time funding that they're putting in there, one-time programs, it really doesn't get to the core of what I'm hearing in my constituencies, that people need help now. They need help now. We have hospitals that were overwhelmed with hallway medicine before. They're overwhelmed now. Small businesses are closing up in our hometown of Hamilton as we speak. And, long-term care continues to be a real concern for people. And so, I would say that this is a budget that just tells people you're essentially on your own. I mean, this is not a government that really, really is going to take this sense of urgency that I'm hearing in the community serious and put it into the budget.
Mitzi Hunter, how about you?
I want to pick up where Sandy left off in terms of the lack of urgency in this budget, and really the need to, the government puts on a headline to protect people, but yet refuses to act in the area that received, the hardest hit when it comes to long-term care. And I think that that's a betrayal to those parents and grandparents who really suffered under that system. I have a gentleman, Mr. McVitie, who lost both his mother and his father to COVID-19 in long-term care. And to say, what the minister just said, that, we announced this program, but we have no details behind it. We have no funding. We have no plan, is a disappointment and a betrayal to those individuals that were really looking for a solution. We really wanted to see a more hopeful budget, a budget that actually offered bold solutions to the size of the problem that we have with COVID-19. And today's budget was a disappointment because it didn't come anywhere near close to that. And in fact, people should start getting worried about Christmas. You're not going to be able to gather with your families because we just don't have the plan in place to keep people safe.
Mike Schreiner, your turn.
Yeah, Steve, the finance minister said the decisions governments make are life and death at times. And that's why I'm concerned that there are some significant gaps in this budget. And one of the biggest ones is the unfunded promise of 4 hours of care for our elders in long-term care. Quebec and BC were hiring additional staff to provide additional care over the summer. Why is Ontario so far behind? And why is it promised in the budget but not funded in the budget? The other one for me is mental health. Mental health advocates are saying, hey, just give us the $380 million a year you promised with your $3.8 billion 10-year plan. They come about $200 million short of that. We're going into a dark winter. We're in the second wave of the pandemic. We know mental health is a huge issue. People need those services now, not 4 or 5 years down the road. And the final one is education. We know that Sick Kids said that we need class sizes of 15, and the fact that the budget doesn't contain the funding to have safe class sizes is a big disappointment and a huge gap.
Let me follow up on that with Sandy Shaw, because your leader, Andrea Horwath, came out today and said that as well, that the money should have been expended so that we don't have 30 kids in a class anymore. It should only be 15. And presumably that would cost multiple billions of dollars to achieve that. Now, I know borrowing money is cheap these days, that is for sure, but do you think the province could afford to do that?
Well, I think if we start with the fact that we now have data that shows that some of, the vast majority of COVID cases are starting to come from our schools, that would make it a priority that you would want to understand that we need to have safer classrooms. And, if kids are not safe in school, parents are getting sick, if they are not going to work because they want to take their kids out of school, that has not only a health impact, but it certainly has an economic impact. And so, we've been arguing for months and months and months that this government really dropped the ball on a safe return to school in September, and that it is about keeping our kids safe and our teachers safe, our education workers, but it's about the impact that the ripple effect that has on people having confidence in our economy and confidence in the kind of return to the growth that we expect for when we come back from this pandemic.
Now, Mitzi Hunter, the thing I want to follow up with you is, your leader said it earlier today, Stephen Del Duca, in the budget lockup, and you repeated it twice, actually, I think, during your first answer, and that is the use of the word betrayal in describing this budget. And, I'm prepared to plead guilty to being a little extra sensitive to hot and heavy rhetoric, given what's going on south of the border right now. But I do want to find out from you whether you really think the word betrayal is an appropriate word to use for a financial document.
It's betrayal, Steve, because when you look at the fact that, this government is packing students and kids into crowded classrooms, putting teachers and educators at risk for their own health and the risk of their families, that is a betrayal. This, despite the fact that the federal government has given this government $381 million for a safe return to school and another tranche coming, over $700 million. Yet within the budget and the structure of education, we don't see the new investment that's required to fund a safe return to school, which means you hire more teachers, that you ensure there's social distancing and safety in schools, and that just has not happened. So yes, it is a betrayal because, governments are there to solve the big, difficult decisions that individuals themselves can't solve. And the biggest one is in education and on healthcare. And they have fallen well short of that.
Mike Schreiner, the thing I want to follow up with you on is what was, frankly, your profession before you got into politics. You were a small business person, and this government thinks it's got a good story to tell in this budget on small business, a variety of new things brought in. What say you on that?
Well, first of all, small businesses have been asking for direct financial supports. The government promised $300 million. Small businesses are asking for broader access to that support, particularly for those businesses who have been forced to shut down again or restrict their businesses in the modified stage 2. And the government's got to come through on that. Basically, if we're going to have economic recovery, we need small businesses to be in a position to recover. They need more direct support and they need access to that funding. You know what? I'm going to do something a lot of opposition critics won't do, Steve, and I'm going to compliment the government on one thing. The increase in the employer health tax exemption to $1 million is something I've been calling for a decade. That is going to be a huge cash flow help to small businesses. I would like to see the government at some point in the future work with small businesses to see an increase in the minimum wage while they're providing that cash flow support to those small businesses to help workers on the front lines, particularly those who have been hardest hit in the hospitality sector.
Well, since you've set the example, let me see if I can do that with your two colleagues here as well. Sandy Shaw, pluck one thing out of this budget you thought was okay.
Wow. Well, I would say that I think, wow, I'm struggling. How is that? I'm so good at my opposition role. I'm having a hard time understanding it. I suppose I would say that the acknowledgement that we need to hire more workers in long-term care, the acknowledgement that is at a crisis level, but the fact that they haven't put any money to it is a complete disappointment. And so it really is hard to look at this budget and say, for people that have been saying over and over again that they need direct help. Mitzi and Mike, we participated in the finance committee, and we had 100 plus days, 500 deputants, 130 written submissions, and almost every single person that was there to talk about their small business said we need direct supports, immediate supports. And the government has offered deferred taxes, and even the employer health tax. That's a cold comfort if you've actually closed your doors, or that if you aren't able to keep people employed and you don't have employees. So they need the support now to keep the doors open, and it just completely gobsmacked by a conservative government that talks about small business and completely failed with the opportunity they had right now to show that they actually understand the importance of small business and to give them concrete support that they need to keep their doors open and to keep people employed in towns across Ontario.
Mitzi Hunter, one thing from you that you thought was okay in this budget.
So we participated in the Standing Committee on Finance and Economic Affairs and provided over 71 recommendations to the government. And some of them made it into this budget. When you look at the film and television tax credit, the digital media fund, even the staycation idea of, encouraging Ontarians to actually explore Ontario and giving them a credit for that. There are a number of ideas that we had put forward, and we see them in this budget, and that is encouraging because ideas can come from any side, and if the government wants to take those and make lives better, then go forward and do that. But I totally agree with the comments of my other colleagues on this panel that it doesn't go far enough in terms of the liquidity that small businesses were calling for to help them to survive another day. Many of them barely made it through the first wave. They might have had a little bit of a bump with the reopening that happened in the summer, but they are completely unable to survive a second wave shutdown and a winter that is ahead. And this budget should have been much stronger on its commitment and its direct investment to help Ontario businesses, because the recovery is going to depend on those small businesses hiring people and keeping the economy going. And if we lose them and they disappear, we're not going to be able to bring them back.
Mike Schreiner, I can't imagine the folks over at the Frost Block, where the Ministry of Finance is, saying, well, wait a second, we are spending a record amount of money in the province of Ontario in this budget. We are going into deficit with a record sizable deficit as well. I mean, we're kind of, we're damming the torpedoes here and really going full throttle. And yet we hear three critics saying that they haven't spent nearly enough. Any lack of or any discomfort on your part urging the government to spend so much more than they already have?
Steve, right now we're in an unprecedented health crisis and economic crisis. The only way we're going to get out of it is to make the kinds of investments, one, to control the virus. What's good for public health is going to be good for the economy. And then secondly, we have to make the investments to have a strong economic recovery. If you look at the three scenarios the government put out, the one that if we hit, which shows economic growth, that's the one that will actually ultimately lead to lower deficits. But if we don't make the investments now, we're not going to get there. And I can tell you, as a small business owner, it's very common for businesses to borrow money or access a line of credit to make investments they know are going to have a high rate of return on that investment. And right now is the time for Ontario to do that. Get this virus under control. Support those small businesses that have been forced to shut down. And then make sure we invest in building back smarter, which is exactly why I've been calling for a green and caring economic recovery for Ontario, so that we invest in the emerging markets and create the jobs of the 21st century coming out of COVID.
Don't you imagine, though, Sandy Shaw, that those medium and larger businesses in Hamilton will really appreciate the 14, 15, 16% break they're about to get in their electricity rates?
Well, they may appreciate it. It really is important that we have a competitive hydro rate, but it needs to be pointed out that this government, who promised to fix the hydro mess, has really just made it messier, in my opinion. And they are subsidizing hydro rates to the tune of about $6 billion a year. So take that out of the spending that you think is going to COVID relief. It's supporting the hydro. And, there's nothing in here for residents. I mean, I hear from my residents all the time, and it's so true. They're struggling to pay their bills. They're struggling to pay their rent. And now their hydro bills are going up. And so they get to pay for hydro twice. They get to pay for it now on their tax base, and then they get to pay it on their increases in their hydro bills. So while we need to have a competitive hydro, this government has done nothing to address the real fundamental problem that we have in hydro and hydro rates in Ontario.
I do want to ask Mitzi Hunter about that, though, because you're a former junior finance minister, and you would have well recognized when you had that role how important it is to have competitive electricity prices in the province. The Ford government now believes that it's made our electricity rates for big and medium-sized businesses much more competitive, allowing them to be more profitable and hire more people. Is that not a good move?
Well, let's see how that pans out. It is a costly move, that is for sure, moving costs off of the rate base onto the tax base. And $6 billion is a lot of funding that could be going into hospitals and education and into retraining that is going to be needed for those businesses to have the skilled workforce that they need. So I do think it's important that government picks the lane that it wants to be in to support citizens and to support our economy. This government clearly has done that by focusing on making hydro rates lower, but there is a cost and someone's paying for that, and those are Ontario's taxpayers.
Yeah, Mike Schreiner, I guess I'll give the last word to you on this. We're down to our last minute here, and that is also on this electricity pricing business here. You've had a lot to say about that as the leader of the Green Party in the past. Everybody wants to pay less for electricity, but what do you think of their approach?
Well, I don't mind giving a break to businesses during a pandemic, but Steve, the biggest problem we're facing right now is much of that $6 billion subsidy is actually benefiting high-income individuals the most through the Liberals' old 25% reduction on electricity bills. Why not cap that so we help the households that need it the most and use that extra money to invest in helping small businesses, homeowners, and renters be able to have energy efficient upgrades so they can lower their bills today, tomorrow, next week, and 10 years into the future by having more energy efficient homes, saving money by saving energy.
We appreciate the three critics of the three main parties at Queen's Park, at least the three main opposition parties, continuing to share their budget night with us, even if only virtually. Sandy Shaw, Mitzi Hunter, Mike Schreiner, great of you to join us on TVO tonight. And as we say, my dad loves to say this, stay positive, but test negative. Okay, everybody?
You stay positive and test negative too, Steve.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schreiner. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, we've heard from the government and the opposition. Now let's get some perspective on what small business is saying. And to do that, we are joined by, in Montreal, Quebec, Daniel Tenser. He's the business editor at HuffPost Canada. And in the downtown core of our provincial capital, Ashley Challoner, Vice President, Policy, Ontario Chamber of Commerce. Good of both of you to join us tonight here on Budget Day in the province of Ontario. We will dive into the details of the budget, but first, why don't I just get a sort of an overarching comment from both of you on your sense of what this budget does for businesses. Ashley, you want to start us off?
So overall, we're quite pleased with this budget's approach to supporting business, certainly with respect to how it's focusing on small businesses, which, as we know, have been harder hit in the pandemic. And it's actually, there's a number of proposals in this budget that are things that we've been asking for some time, with respect to taxes, with respect to electricity. So overall, we're quite pleased.
Daniel, you've heard now from the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. I suspect you knew that already. As you fan out across the province and get reaction from others, what are you hearing?
Well, I'm getting sort of a similar reaction there, too, that business groups are quite happy with this. There are a lot of goodies in this budget, and some were targeted towards businesses, some were targeted towards individuals. But if you look at how everything was designed, even the stuff targeted towards individuals is really sort of targeted towards business. When you look at things such as the seniors' home tax credit and the 20% subsidy for staycations, however that will be worked out, all those things tend to accrue financial benefits to business. So there's definitely a sense in this budget that they are paying attention to small businesses and Ontario businesses and funneling money that way, even when they're looking at other things than direct support to businesses.
Yeah, actually, that staycation thing was sort of the shiny bauble in the window for this budget. Got a lot of people sort of wondering what that was. No details here, just an idea to explore the idea of a subsidy for staycations. We know tourism operators have been hit hard during this pandemic. What do you either know or hope will emerge from that policy once we start to get some meat on that bone?
We don't know anything yet, and it's clear that they have this idea of an idea, and that they're going to consult with the tourism industry and other stakeholders to fill it out and to see if it'll actually work the way they want it to. But this is really something that a number of different organizations, including ours, have been talking about. It makes a lot of sense from a safety perspective, as well as from a consumer comfort perspective, to focus on Ontario tourism. We know that that sector has been incredibly hard hit. And it makes a lot of sense to encourage Ontarians to go out and explore their province and spend their money, especially in those areas that perhaps rely on tourism largely for their economic development and revenue.
I wonder, though, Daniel, whether or not it would be, and again, we don't know, but whether it would be enough to encourage people to start traveling around the province when a lot of people obviously are, afraid to go back to work or afraid even to leave the home because they just don't feel it's safe out there. Would you imagine that this program, however it rolls out, how effective can it be?
Well, I think the design of the program is going to be key. A lot of the time, people don't even know about the available tax credits that they have and that sort of thing. So if it's just sort of rolled out as part of a budget and not much is said about it, I can imagine it having not that much impact. If they design it in a way that kind of stands out, if it's visible to the public, if people know that it's out there, then I think it has a chance of being kind of stimulative for these industries in Ontario that are obviously suffering right now through the pandemic. I think really marketing this program would be key. And how it's actually designed. Is it a tax credit? Is it a direct cash transfer somehow? What they actually do, what people are promised, I think will make a big difference here.
Mm-hmm. Ashley, the other sort of neat new idea was the notion of spending $57 million to help small businesses increase their online presence, presumably by helping them develop websites or something like that. How important might that be to small businesses in Ontario?
It's very important, and there's been a number of organizations and government initiatives, both at the provincial and the federal level, designed to help small businesses pivot to e-commerce or to establish a digital presence. But what is critically important to making that work, of course, is investing in broadband internet infrastructure so that these businesses can even access digital markets. And thankfully, we did see some of that in the budget as well. So it looks like the province recognizes that not only is digital absolutely essential to business right now and for the future, but the infrastructure problem is what's really keeping them held back.
It's funny you mentioned that, and well, funny is not the right word, but Daniel, we did a program earlier this week where we had somebody on the line from Sudbury, and of course the broadband up there was so bad, the screen was freezing up all the time, and we had a lot of trouble understanding what she was saying. You can imagine how important this will be to people in rural and northern Ontario to see broadband improved. Now, they've got more than $500 million in this budget to improve it. How far along the way does that get you?
I'm not sure that it'll actually do the trick. I mean, it's certainly a lot more than what governments had committed before. But in this pandemic, we've seen governments step up to the plate. It's really become obvious that in this day and age, we can't afford to be behind on these technologies. A company in Scandinavia just this week released a survey of wireless prices. And once again, Canada came out #1 in the world on a per user basis. We are paying some of the highest wireless fees. It is true that we are a very large country geographically with a population that's spread out between many different centers, and it's expensive to fund that. But at the same time, I think that we haven't really put much of an emphasis on this, and we've let the big telcos basically, wire up the places where it's profitable and not wire up the places where it's not profitable. And now, in the midst of this pandemic, where businesses have to shift online, we're seeing, a negative effect from that. We're seeing the businesses in rural areas really are being held back. I think it's a good thing that the Ontario government has focused on it. And I think those efforts need to continue until we've got full coverage across this country.
Ashley, let me ask you about the insurance industry. My hunch is if we were having this conversation pre-pandemic and you read something in the budget about the government of Ontario wanting to come at the insurance industry, as it kind of has for the last 6 months, demanding rebates to customers and that kind of thing, you would not be pleased. So, okay, we're post-pandemic now. We're in the midst of the pandemic. What's your reaction to that nugget in the budget?
Well, the problem is that the insurance industry is facing some pretty big sea changes and new risks and extreme risks globally. This isn't just a problem in Ontario. And so the impact on Ontario businesses, it's not just because of an Ontario thing. This really is a global thing. So it's understandable that a lot of businesses, especially smaller ones, are having issues with their insurers, and those are legitimate concerns and ones that I know the insurance industry is aware of and working on. But it's not particularly helpful for the government to step in and attempt to demonize the insurance industry when there are bigger forces at play. And especially this week when the Insurance Bureau of Canada announced a program to assist the hospitality industry, particularly with managing risk and getting the insurance they need. So it's a business to business issue, and we are seeing some movement on that, and we would hope that the government would be a little bit more productive in helping them along.
Daniel, would you use the word demonize in the way that the Ford government referred to the insurance industry in the budget today?
Well, I think I can understand the frustration that a lot of people have been feeling with various parts of the insurance industry. I mean, I have been covering myself the problem with condo insurance over the past year or more in Canada, with a lot of companies pulling out of insuring condo buildings, the common areas, the buildings themselves. It's getting harder and harder to find coverage. Now, like Ashley said, there are a lot of reasons for that. Climate change is a major one. The cost of environmental damage, costs of construction are rising. So replacement costs on damaged buildings are rising. All of these things are convincing a lot of companies to get out of the business. But we do need to actually address this issue that we need insurance. There has to be a solution in there somewhere. The Ford government, in terms of helping businesses cover the costs, it's a good short-term solution, but I think we need to also look at longer-term solutions. I don't think that simply having the government step up and pay half of people's premiums as those premiums spike is a sustainable long-term solution to the problem.
There's another interesting little wrinkle in this budget, in as much as it is the law in Ontario that the Minister of Finance is supposed to, in his budget, lay out a path to balance. And it's interesting that the government sort of passed, or will propose to pass, a little out clause saying, well, we don't really have to do that this time, because there is no path to balance in this budget. Ashley, is that a problem?
Sort of, but sort of not at the same time. These are unprecedented times, to use an extremely overused phrase. And so, I think we're all in a situation that none of us predicted. And so we're being forced into situations where we have to make decisions that we otherwise wouldn't have. So certainly, while generally the business community is concerned about Ontario's fiscal situation, we're still very much in the midst of this pandemic. There's still a lot of spending and support the government will have to get out the door. And we have another budget coming up not too far in the future, in the spring of 2021. And the government has made it clear that this is kind of part one of their plan, and they're doing a number of scenario assessments for how the pandemic will go and how the economy will respond. So I think it may be a bit premature for us to get on their case, so to speak, about debt and deficit, but it's certainly something to consider and be concerned about in the long term.
Well, yeah, Daniel, I mean, again, we go back to pre-pandemic and now midst of pandemic. Pre-pandemic, if any government of Ontario came in purporting to increase spending by 13%, and put the deficit through the roof at $38.5 billion, you can imagine what the business community's reaction would be. I don't hear anybody saying the deficit's too big. I don't hear anybody saying they're spending too much. So do we have to reevaluate what it means to take on debt in this province now?
Well, I think during this period, yeah, especially from a political perspective, I mean, I don't think there is any political penalty right now for massive deficit spending. People want it. Businesses want it. Businesses have, they suffered an extreme shock to revenue in this spring. Government aid has been robust. It's been very helpful. We can see that in the data. I think people right now want that to continue as long as this uncertainty goes on, as long as we don't know how long the pandemic continues. I think most people, if you look at the polling, most people agree that there will be a reckoning for all this debt spending eventually, but that day hasn't come. And if you look at the financial situation out there, well, the government of Ontario is paying about 1.35% on the money it's borrowing right now, which is super cheap. It's gone up a little bit since the summer, so you got to watch that. But you're not going to get a better deal in terms of deficit spending than you are these days.
For sure. Ashley, down to my last minute here, and I just want to ask you about electricity rates, because there are, of course, some big subsidies in this budget for medium and larger size industrial and commercial businesses in order to help keep their electricity rates lower than they otherwise were. 14%, 16% rate cuts. How important is that to business?
It's very important. I mean, it has been important for years, but certainly now electricity is one of those costs that is profit insensitive, which is kind of the phrase of the day. So essentially, like many taxes, property taxes, for example, businesses are going to be paying the same amount regardless of if they brought in their expected revenue or not. So the government has taken a focus on profit insensitive costs, and electricity is a big one there. And so they're doing what they can to reduce the impact on industry. And actually a benefit to this, a side benefit to this, but one that we've been talking about for some time, is making Ontario more competitive with respect to its electricity rates. And it looks like this is something that is going to be a side effect of these rate reductions. The Ontario government is projecting that we'll be competitive with our neighboring jurisdictions in the states, which will help retain business and also potentially attract business to Ontario as well.
As they say, we shall see. Daniel, Ashley, it's good of both of you to join us and help us out with this tonight on Budget Day in the province of Ontario. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Steve.
And that is the agenda for Thursday, November 5th, 2020. For more on Budget 2020, including analysis and background, take a look at our online coverage at tvo.org and check back on Monday when we'll talk deficits. Tomorrow, author Dakshana Bhaskaramuthi talks to Nam Kiwanuka about her book that, while chronicling a tragic story of a young father's terminal cancer diagnosis, is a truly life-affirming read. I'm Steve Paikin. Thanks for watching TVO, for joining us online at tvo.org, and Nam, we'll see you here tomorrow.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.